When I was a kid at primary school, I remember one day with my friends discovering that if you got a pencil and you put it on the edge of the desk and you karate chopped it, it would snap. Pretty obvious, I know, but it was such a cool discovery. And so me and my friends then proceeded to work our way through every pencil we could get our hands on, put it on the edge of the desk, karate chop it. And it was so cool, it was really, really fun. But then I suddenly realised actually what I was doing was completely wrong. And I knew I was going to get into so much trouble. And I didn't want to tell the teacher, because I just destroyed a whole load of the class pencils. But I guess there are times when we've all done things wrong and we realise we've done something wrong, but we don't want to admit it. But then when we don't admit it, there's real guilt. I remember that just guilt eating me up inside about these snapped, destroyed pencils, until obviously the teacher suddenly went, hang on, where's all the pencils gone? Why are there all lots of broken pencils over here? What's going on? And obviously we got into trouble. And it wasn't nice getting into trouble, but equally that guilt sort of really ate me up inside. And I wonder if that's an experience that you've had, where you've done something which you know is not right. Maybe years ago, maybe before you became a Christian, maybe while you were a Christian. We all mess up and do things wrong all the time. But I wonder if there's something particular that's just in your mind that you know about, and that guilt is eating you up, and you know you haven't actually come before God and asked His forgiveness. I'm not going to tell you because it's private, but I can think of something in my life years ago that took me a long time to realise what I needed to do was to come before God and say, Lord, I'm really sorry for doing that. That was wrong. And when we do that, there's just such a sense of relief. And the psalmist David recognises that relief in one of his psalms. Psalm 32, he says this: Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. The psalmist was holding on to that sin. He was holding on to those things that were buried deep inside him that he knew he needed to deal with, and yet he just didn't want to deal with it. He'd snapped a load of pencils and didn't want to admit it. But then eventually he comes to the realisation that when he did admit his transgressions, his sins before God, it just made all the difference in the world. Because when he admitted his sin, the psalmist writes, you forgave the guilt of my sin. And that's what Jesus does for us on the cross. He enables us to be forgiven because he takes God's righteous anger, God's wrath, the judgment goes on him and not on us. We're free from the weight of guilt. We don't have to hold on to that anymore. actually that thing that's been bugging us, that's been eating us up inside, that thing that's been weighing us down. The psalmist describes it as his bones wasting away, describes it as groaning, feeling God's hand heavy upon him. We don't need to worry about that anymore. We don't need to know that, because that's all taken away and dealt with at the cross. Maybe there's something in your life right now, maybe something recent, maybe something from ages ago that you know you haven't brought before God, something that is really hard to admit and ask God's forgiveness. But actually that's what we need to do, we realise. That's what the psalmist did, and knew the wonderful forgiveness of God. Some of us have got time this lockdown to think. Some of us have got time on our own. Some of us are pretty busy still. Some of us are going mad busy. But nonetheless, lockdown is still a good time to just look at our own lives, to assess and to go, Lord, is there something I need to bring before you and ask your forgiveness? Is there something I haven't dealt with before you? My guess is there will be things for each of us. It will be different, and it's between us and God. But can I urge you, do it. Spend that time. Ask his forgiveness, because through the Lord Jesus he has forgiven us, and we can know the weightlessness of being free from sin. It's just brilliant.